Now I'd like to introduce the President and CEO of the New Jersey Chamber of Commerce, Tom Bracken.
Thanks a lot, Rick. Let me first say that this meeting with this webinar with John is 100% unrehearsed. It's a very informal discussion that we will have. And what we're really trying to do is frame our mission as we see it going forward to help our state with the issues of inequality opportunity. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce launched the Equality of Opportunity Initiative to address opportunity gaps that perpetuate broader inequalities in our society and hold back individual and business success and economic growth because of systemic barriers to equality of opportunity for Black Americans and people of color. The Chamber went on to say that in order to drive meaningful, measurable impact through public policy and private sector solutions, we must learn, listen, and lead. Although a lot of effort has been happening over the past several decades to create an equitable system, there are still stark disparities. While significant changes will not happen overnight, real change towards equality of opportunity in the United States is imperative for the country's social and economic well-being. To highlight all of their initiative, the U.S. Chamber last Thursday put on a national town hall called the National Summit on Equality of Opportunity. I listened and took part in this for 3.5 hours and was absolutely captivated by the discussions and the conversations that I heard. The purpose of the summit was to send a message that was long overdue to address and act upon an issue that was socially, economically, and morally wrong and preventing us from retrieving and achieving the prosperity we all deserve and desire as a country and a state. The issue is that of racial inequality in all aspects of society. The town hall meeting last week had 5,000 organizations and companies participating, representing 46 states, and over 400 chambers of commerce were co-sponsors. The summit was meant to frame the case to begin action to unleash the significant benefits that would result from addressing, among other things, the education, employment, economic, and entrepreneurial inequities that exist today. When this summit was first announced and a national steering group of 10 people were designated to head up this town hall, I took great pride in hearing that John Harmon was one of those 10 people. What a great acknowledgement of John's dedicated persistence over the many years that I've known him about the need to address these same issues in New Jersey. It also struck me that this was an opportunity to follow the national lead and attack this problem in our state. I called my friend John and we agreed that we would dedicate ourselves to be a national leader in this initiative. Our governor and our legislature have for several years, and with regard to many issues like paid leave, family leave, minimum wage, they've talked about how we were leading the country in addressing these issues. John and I felt that our collective thought was that if we could lead in helping the working poor and middle class, if the governor and legislature could help the middle class and working poor with those issues, just think how we could help that same group of people and our entire state by leveling inequality. So here we are to begin that mission. John and I will be enlisting commitments from many groups and companies in New Jersey to support our initiatives, and we will be asking for dialogue to begin to address the need to educate all of us regarding the severity of the issues and how assistance can help. I will be approaching my board with recommendations to structurally change what we do and to reflect our commitment and hopefully that others will follow our lead. We know this won't be easy and will entail some very difficult discussions. But the impact of the pandemic is forcing companies right now to look very introspectively at how they do business and with whom they do business. The timing is perfect to incorporate this kind of change, the kind of change we will be advocating into those already existing internal discussions. And at the end of the day, when we get to a new normal, there will be a meaningful positive impact if some of the things we're talking about are implemented. I would be the first to say to you that I am not qualified to lead this initiative, but I am qualified to listen, and I am qualified to learn about the breadth of the inequalities and begin to understand what needs to be done. And I am very qualified to assist the lead of John Harmon, whose experiences give him great insight into developing the positive paths forward that we need in our state. So with that, I'm going to turn over to my friend John and my colleague in this initiative to begin our dialogue. John?
Well, Tom, I thank you for yeah, here we go. Let me start that there. Tom, I just want to thank you and for being a friend, for being the confidant and the supporter of the mission of the African American Chamber of Commerce, and to the amazing team of professionals that you have there at the New Jersey State Chamber of Commerce, and my board colleagues. I come to this opportunity with all that I have and all that I give, that we collectively can make a difference in our state. I just want to take a minute to say really how much I appreciate my relationship with Tom. When I initially embarked on establishing the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey around 2003, I had some conversations with a number of people around the state, and many of them said a lot of encouraging things, but there's motion and then there's action. And I will submit to you that I did not get much action from a number of folks, particularly people that are in this Chamber of Commerce industry. But Tom embraced the idea and welcomed me to be a part of his board. And we've been working ever since to try to make the state as more competitive as possible. So what I would like to do, if you would indulge me a few minutes, the events leading up to today with the COVID-19 pandemic and the brutal murder of George Floyd and others across this country, it gave us all an opportunity to reflect on, what we value most. Also gave us a chance to really reset the conversation and embark on a chance to leverage resources, opportunities, and information to take advantage of this great opportunity to make this country live up to its true creed. So I want to just take a minute and give a little historical perspective, if you will. America is the great experiment. Many of our ancestors migrated here from distant countries coming into Ellis Island. However, my ancestors, my family, came here not on their own. They were brought here in 1619, arriving in Jamestown, Virginia, as slaves. And many of my ancestors worked a number of years for no wages, creating industries in this country that have survived generations and amassed significant wealth for a lot of folks. 1863, President Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, and leading up to that, two former slaves, Robert Smalls and President Douglas, were able to negotiate with the then President Lincoln to include 170,000 slaves in his army, and thus given us victory in producing these United States as we know it today. For me, that is the first step in terms of diversity and inclusion, and leveraging the inclusion as a value proposition. That same model we're trying to bring to fruition today for those same reasons. So 1863, then it was 1865, 2 years later, when General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and shared with about 200,000 slaves that, hey, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, you were freed 2 years ago, and you're still held in captivity. That is known as Juneteenth. And that's something that has really gotten a lot of attention lately. But fast forward 1900, Booker T. Washington founded the Negro Business League, which in essence was Chamber of Commerce, 40 chapters between Maryland and Texas to really promote capitalism and free enterprise. Again, something we do today. And just with the backdrop of slavery, just about 35 years removed, you can imagine how difficult it was for him to negotiate with many of those slaves who were aggressively migrating north. And then you had these industries that had a supply and demand issue, and enabled them then to forge conversations to negotiate, to get more strategically aligned for mutual benefit. So that seems to be a very positive development in the history of our country. But many of those who embraced Booker T. Washington's model moved over to Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a community called Greenwood, Oklahoma, and they embarked on a number of business enterprises, built hotels, hospitals, they had their own post office, they owned their own banks, retail shops, barbershops, and grocery stores. So they had an economy that was really self-contained, blacks doing business with each other. And then one day, there was a gentleman, a shoe shiner, who was accused of sexually assaulting a young lady. He was 19, she was 16. And that led to the mass looting by mobs and burning down what we call Black Wall Street, a major setback in the trajectory of building this diversity and inclusion, or this whole new American relationship. So fast forward, as a result, 1,256 houses were torched, 215 houses were looted without being burned down. Some between 100 and 300 people were killed. The two newspapers was torched, the schools were torched, the banks were torched. And at the end of the day, after all said and done, come to find out that the guy, Dick Rowland, who was accused, apparently stumbled and bumped into the lady. All the charges were dropped. And again, a massive misunderstanding that set back something that could have been great even today. So as we come to this conversation today, and I'm pretty excited because history has always been our best teacher. And so we learn. So education is expensive. Truth not only hurts, but it also helps if we have people who are attentive to the conversation. So it's all about perspective and perception and how we collectively engage those two ideologies and come out with an imperative of mutual benefit. So that's what we hope to achieve today through our partnership with Tom Bracken and the New Jersey State Chamber and our board colleagues. So Tom, I'll stop there. The U.S. Chamber, I've been involved with since 2001, as well as the National Black Chamber, looking to understand the national perspective and or best practices that we can apply here in New Jersey. So that's kind of my foundation about, the value in the people. I think George Floyd and other blacks have been murdered in the streets because they were not valued. They were still treated as chattel. And we hope to change that paradigm here in the state of New Jersey, which is one of the most diverse states in America.
Thanks, John. So as John and I were talking about how we would go about doing this and what steps we needed to take, we're still forming those steps. We're still putting together our thoughts on this. But I went back and thought about my career prior to being head of the chamber, which was a banking career. And probably the most significant and proud achievement I had as a banker was setting up in two different banks that I led, a unit to provide loans to the minority business community. This was at a time when very few banks were doing that. And we decided that to support the communities that we were in, we would set that up. And our board was supportive, but hesitant about the results. And I can tell you that over the time we've had that minority business lending program, that group of loans and that group of businesses was the best performing sector of our balance sheet. It is amazing what can happen when you give people the opportunity to succeed. What they will do to prove to you, to prove to their family, to prove to themselves that if they're given the opportunity, they can take advantage of that and they can perform in a way that's complementary to everything going on around them. So I thought about that, and that's kind of really what we're talking about here. And then I reflected on the foundation we have at the Chamber, which is very involved with a national program called Jobs for America's Graduates, which is really taking on the at-risk students in a lot of our troubled secondary and high school and educational systems, and working with those children to give them a pathway to a productive future, which without that involvement, they probably would not have. And the success we've had there, led by Donna Custard, who's our president, is just phenomenal. So again, there's a point of giving people who were not given the opportunity to succeed, giving them the opportunity to succeed, and they took advantage of that, and they made something out of their lives, and they're making something out of their lives that they not otherwise would have. And so what this national initiative on leveling the inequalities in education, in entrepreneurship, in employment, in economic success, and other things, that's what this is all about, to recognize that there are many, many people in our state who have not been given the opportunity that other parts of our population have been given. And these people are as qualified as anyone to succeed, and they need the opportunity to succeed. So John said it earlier about a lot of talk and no action, and I've seen that in my career. I mean, I've been around a long time in New Jersey. I've seen a lot of talk. I've seen a lot of money thrown at things. But talk and money don't necessarily get the results you need. It really involves commitment, and commitment that is followed through and embraced by people who have been successful and who want to see other people succeed. And that's what John and I are going to try to find a way to do. And I think economically, it'll be tremendously beneficial to our state. Socially, it is absolutely going to be beneficial. Morally, it is the moral thing to do and the right thing to do. And I'm excited about doing this, and I'm sure we'll fall flat on our face many times. And I just hope that we have more successes than we have failures. But we do know that it's going to be a jagged path forward. But I think I know the commitment is there from John and I know the commitment is there from many other people, that once we engage them, we can start to build a team that's going to get this done. So, John, why don't you just kind of build on that if you'd like, and then we can start to have a little dialogue and maybe some questions.
No, Tom, I think that was really great what you shared. And Nelson Mandela said, "It's difficult in the beginning until it's done." I had the privilege of being in South Africa back, I believe it was in November, and this is a guy who was in prison for 26 years. And what's interesting, although when he was released, he knew that he had the majority population, and he knew that he would ultimately become the president. But he refused to take the mantle of president until he had an agreement to work with the minority party. Although the minority party existed, they still had all the power and the resources. And so it does no one any good to have the majority and not have the wherewithal to do anything to advance the ball. So here in New Jersey, it's the reverse. Blacks make up about 13 or 14% of the population. Blacks have the highest poverty, the highest unemployment. 93% of Black businesses are sole proprietorships. Our net worth is $5,900 versus $275,000 for white. Access to capital is great, but if you have access to opportunity, you have a better chance of getting the requisite capital to execute your business model. I do recall, Tom, when you started the loan fund with Mercer County, we were very excited about it. It was a few $1 million at the time. That was several years ago. But to your point, the loans performed rather well. And again, it gets back to the start of perception. Everyone has a perception, and I think that's great. But when you get around the table and have an engaged conversation, you find out how much you have in common. We talk about the entitlement spend and the subsidies to underperforming communities. If you hire Black businesses are going to hire Black people and reduce the unemployment levels and thus start to chip away at the entitlement spend. If you raise up Black businesses, they have a sense of pride and ownership, like the folks back in Greenwood before they were decimated by some folks who got some misinformation and acted accordingly. So this is a great opportunity for us to come together and do something that could be transformational, not only in New Jersey, but throughout America. So my commitment to you, Tom, and all the folks that are listening, my board colleagues, is that we would not offer up any business, notwithstanding our commitment to our members and Blacks in the state of New Jersey, that could not meet the value proposition. This is not a charitable engagement. This is about value. This is about business. This is about return on investment. This is about equity and prosperity. So that's the pledge we would make to you. Moreover, we have, given our work with the Department of Labor, we have a pretty good database of candidates that we're updating that need employment. There's candidates that we could offer up for board seats. There's some initiatives that you mentioned about folks throwing money at initiatives. If money is great to put money out there, but if the money is focused and targeted on achieving the objectives that we are talking about, that's the transformational part. This is not a charitable undertaking. This is a focused undertaking to improve the overall competitiveness of the state. And we have some very generous corporations, but moreover, we have some corporations that exist on our board that really care about the citizens of New Jersey. They really care about how we can work together and become a true community. So that's what we're all about, and that's what I'm hoping to work with you to achieve. So board directors, supply diversity, offering up businesses for opportunities, candidates for employment, and then some targeted investment around community programs, education, health disparities, getting many of our ex-offenders with the requisite skills to be gainfully employed or to start a business enterprise. Many of those programs we're doing already here at the African American Chamber. Our leadership program with high school students, we can partner with, in partnership with you in the foundation and Donna to expand that and go after resources together so that we can make a greater impact on the state. So those are some of the things that I see as potential outcomes from this engagement. And I'd definitely be interested in hearing from those who are listening some questions. But I do want to point out one other testament, if you will. If you recall, Tom, we were on a board call a few weeks ago, and one of the members Jack Miller responded that we had offered up a couple of our members to participate with him on a response of an RFP that was existing in the state. And Jack was very pleased with the quality of our recommendations, and they've since been moving forward and looking at various opportunities. That's what we can do here in this partnership. We can help mitigate some of the perceived risks and really get some folks at the table to engage about real business. There's some great Black businesses in the state, both at the baseline level and from the manufacturing side. I got to know from Mike Ricketts, who runs QPSI, and he said to say hello to you, Tom, because you gave him his first loan. When people told him no, it was Tom Bracken. He was either at Core States or there were so many names, Tom, as a part of your history in banking, but he couldn't recall which institution, but nonetheless, you were the man that responded to his request, and now he runs an enterprise in several states, employs probably 1,000 people, and is one of our most respected Black businesses in America. And that's a lot attributed to this man, Tom Bracken, who responded to his request for a loan when many folks told him, we couldn't do it.
John, thank you for that. And I do recall that. And again, that's what was good about the banking business when you could help people like Mike. But, as I think about this, right now in our country, in our state, we have an economic crisis, a health crisis, and racial strife that are all convening and peaking at the same time. And that is a daunting task to overcome. But anytime you have that kind of adversity, it also screams of opportunity. And I think that there's no better time for this kind of an initiative than now, because there's so much turmoil and there's so much need for change. And this change can be additive and positive. It is the absolute perfect time for this initiative to come forward. And John, because you're part of it, that we have recently put together an alliance of all the chambers of New Jersey. We're attempting to get all the chambers into a more cohesive conversational mode where we can benefit from each other's strengths and weaknesses. We can help each other on issues, and we can help provide for successes in all the regions and cities and in New Jersey by working together. And part of that initiative fits perfectly what we're going to attempt to do, because what we can do here is take what we're talking about down to the local and regional level to help people understand the opportunities in those localities and build that grassroots support for what we're doing. And then in addition to that, through our board, which is many of the larger corporations and larger middle market companies, to then engage them. So you have kind of a top-down approach through our board members. You have a bottom-up grassroots support from the local chambers and their members, and the convergence of those two could be very powerful. And that's one thing I can see helping our success. And I'm looking forward to bringing that forward to the alliance of chambers that we put together, because I think many of them are going to embrace emphatically what we're doing, and we'll see the benefits of what we're doing. So, I'm sorry, Johnny, was that you?
Yeah, I said, go ahead. I want you to finish your thought there.
Oh, that is my thought. That's just one opportunity we have. But I think the bottom line here, what we have to start is, you can't put together meaningful solutions unless we have education. And you don't need it because you've lived it, but I need to get educated much more on the issues so that I can help you formulate these paths forward that we're looking to accomplish. And dialogue, honest dialogue with people, very constructive dialogue with people is something that's important to us. And I'm looking forward to that, because I've had that with you over the years, and it's always been very productive.
So Tom, to that point, I think the Alliance of Chamber Network, they say education is expensive, right? And but we're willing to educate to minimize the expense. There's a huge upside to this, and those who will get to know me, just like you and many colleagues around the board have gotten to know me and our organization, will realize that we're committed to mutual success. We're committed to improving the competitiveness of the state. We have an amazing board of directors. The staff is first rate. They come into work every day, embrace the mission with overwhelming passion and commitment to excellence. And it's just so exciting to see them at work. We executed a summit last week, 2 days virtually, which we've never done, but they were committed to make sure that this was the best presentation that we could bring before the community. And our hope is that we'll get better at that. But I wanted to say, I talked about how you enabled Mike Ricketts to bring the QPSI vision forward. But I too have had a number of transformational moments in my tenure as president here of the chamber. And one I like to point out was, Wells Fargo has been a huge partner with the chamber. Brenda Ross Doolin, who's no longer in that capacity, was a blessing. Michelle Lee, it was also a blessing in helping us here in New Jersey. But there was two other gentlemen who were not a part of a national financial institution, but here a state chartered institution, and that was Kevin Cummings and Dominic Kama. I approached them when they were looking to acquire Roma Bank here in Trenton, a 100-year institution or so in our city, and I shared with them our vision about the vision of the African American Chamber of Commerce and our need to have a building to house our activities and to support the vision that I had for this organization. And they extended a $350,000 commitment by way of a grant to the chamber in a small line of credit. And we took those resources, acquired a building, and got our members to refurbish the place. And now this is our home, and we satisfied that obligation back to Investors Bank sometime last year. But again, it starts with one, acknowledgement, then two, accountability, a plan, implementation, and execution. And that's what we're talking about today. We're committed to all the things that both you and I have articulated today, but moreover, we're also committed to the fact that we do not want this to be just another emotional conversation. We want this to be a transformational moment here for the state of New Jersey. So I'd be glad to take some questions if there are any out there, but I think you and I have said it. We've said it again, we've said it again. We think this is a great opportunity for New Jersey, and we're committed here at the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey to do all we can to bring this to fruition and be a national model that may transform the landscape of America.
And before we get to questions, John, let me just say that I think I said it up front, and I'd like to say it again, that, I've already had a discussion with our board officers about making some transformational changes to our board and allowing us to look like what we are going to commit to and to start to develop a firm strategy to attack this, just like we have strategies to attack every other initiative that we've encountered in New Jersey. So that's going to be a dialogue we're going to have with the board. It's going to make us look different as a board. It's going to make us act different as a board. But I think it'll be for the betterment of everybody that's involved and hopefully for the betterment of the state. So, Rick, do we have any questions that John and I can answer?
Hi, Tom, it's Ray. I do have
Ray?
a few. Yeah, I have a few here, some of which would go back to some of the things you've said on the call so far. But before those, I thought we'd go back to a question more related to the event last Thursday, the U.S. Chamber event. Could each of you tell us what was the single strongest takeaway from your work on and listening to what you did on the U.S. Chamber call last Thursday?
John, you want to take it?
Yeah, I'll start. And there were a number of takeaways. I mean, when I approached the U.S. Chamber during our steering committee or CC 100 call, and I shared with them that I thought that they should take the lead on this initiative. They were initially talking about issuing maybe an op-ed in response to what was going on around the country with George Floyd, et cetera. And I told them unequivocally that they had the wherewithal to do something much more significant than that. And they responded, they heeded the call, they responded and said, hey, John, we're interested in taking this forward. And I gave them my thoughts about what I thought it would look like. And they really moved on this rather quickly. So that's the one takeaway. They heard, they responded, and they responded in a very impactful way that could have some major positive implications for the country. And then two, hearing the president of AT&T really declare his commitment to this and expanding the work that AT&T has already done. They're one of the world leaders in diversity spend, and he doubled out and said he wants to take that even further. And some of the comments made by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. But at the end of the day, this is an exciting time, and that event was great.
Yeah, I would say that my biggest takeaway was the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is probably the most powerful business organization in the country. And they deal with a lot of very significant issues nationally and internationally. And to show the commitment they've made to this, from Tom Donahue, the CEO, all through their organization, and to engage as many people as they did, and to have 5,000 organizations tune into this, just kind of was so impactful to me that they have taken on this in light of everything else they're doing, and taken on this right now as probably their primary mission right now. So when you have something that's an organization that is that powerful, embracing a mission like this, you have to believe that the issues are real and the opportunities are significant. So many people on that call who were discussing different aspects of the inequality opportunities talked about the fact that we must do this. This is an absolutely mandatory need that has to be addressed in our country, and we have to make a difference, and we have to be different as we get out of this. Because if we waste this opportunity, then this is probably, it's just unconscionable that we should waste that opportunity. So the commitment of an organization like the U.S. Chamber, above all else they're dealing with, to put this as probably their top priority, was very impactful to me.
No, excellent point, Tom.
All right. And John, what do you think? And then Tom, what do you think we'll see manifest out of what happened last Thursday? What will be the next few things we will see come out of the U.S. Chamber as a result of what happened Thursday?
Well, I can tell you they've already started to assign committees to implement and execute the game plan. We have a call today to follow up. And so to Tom's point, to given their whole portfolio work to make this a kind of a priority and sincerely get their full weight behind it, I tell you, it's encouraging, but it has the potential to do some great things here in this country. And they got a major person like Gail King to moderate the discussion. So I'm sure this the presentation is going to be leveraged throughout from other networks because this is a big deal, and I'm excited that we're part of it.
Okay, Tom, do you want to add anything to that?
I think I'm not a participant like John is, and I think I've read that the chamber is beginning to dig in immediately after the town hall. So John has a much greater insight into that, and I think he just put that insight into perspective. And I know that they said that they were going to begin working immediately, and it sounds like they are.
Absolutely.
I was curious on a side note when Tom described the loan programs focused on minority and African American businesses, minority-owned and African American businesses. How many of those kinds of programs are still in existence today around the state? How many of them can we find? Where are they?
Well, Ray, that's an excellent question. And Tom and I always talk about capital access. So there are a few players in this space, but we need to get a little more robust investment in terms of getting capital to the baseline. Capital is available, but it's the cost. The cost of capital and accessing the capital in a timely manner can make the difference in terms of you may have a deal to execute, and if you don't get the resources in a timely manner, the deal may fall by the wayside. There are businesses who are very innovative, have ideas, and they can't get the resources either as equity or debt in a timely manner to advance their ideas. So innovation and the ability to position businesses to grow and scale could be transformational, not only for them, but for the communities in the state in which we all live, that we currently live in.
Hey, Ray, I would add to that to say that in the federal assistance stimulus programs that have come out, the very popular PPP loans, very few minority businesses had an opportunity to participate in that vis-a-vis other companies in our economic society. And in the redo of some of those programs, dollars were carved out for smaller banks who would have a much closer relationship with minority businesses to provide that capital. And also our state EDA did the same thing. They've carved out programs for the minority business community. And so that kind of would tell you that they're probably, because of all the over-regulation in the banking industry today, a lot of the former ways of doing business, like I was able to put in place, are probably not as prominent as they were. And that's reflected in these stimulus packages. But the fact that the second round of stimulus packages, both at the state and the federal level, allowed for more access to minority businesses to that kind of capital, I think we kind of reinforce that thought.
Yeah, I agree.
So does the data show that more minority-owned businesses are taking advantage of these programs now than they were when they started? Do we know?
Yes, I would say, to Tom's point, we were fortunate enough to be looped in as a partner with the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, and I salute Tim Sullivan for really working more closely with me and the chamber to get us involved. The Hispanics statewide chamber was involved, the Veterans Chamber, and a group out of Jersey City was involved. All of which being able to provide technical assistance and connect businesses that were being refused at their current banks to have access to these resources made a big difference. So what Tom is alluding to, we need to expand those types of opportunities. We need to get the capital in the hands of folks that can get capital to the people who traditionally have not had the access at a requisite level. It's our hope that the chamber can play a prominent role in that as well. That is something that we're extremely interested in doing. As a lender, $1 million loan, $2 million loan, $10 million loans versus a $5,000, $10,000 loan it's the same process. And so if you have a large overhead like a big institution, your probability of trying to do those smaller loans because the acquisition costs, risk mitigation, and all those factors make the cost prohibitive. So if you can pass that down to someone that can execute that for you, it produces that win-win. Institutions get their Community Reinvestment Act, and the businesses get the capital to grow and sustain themselves. So I think that's a strategy that we need to figure out.
Ray, on the summit, there was a lot of dialogue about access to capital or the lack of access to capital from the minority business community. And I think it's very obvious from my knowledge of venture capital funds, private equity funds, angel investors, that they are not focused on the minority businesses. And there are a lot of entrepreneurs in the minority sector that would thrive if they had the access to capital that other companies had. And I don't recall, John, the name of the gentleman. You sent me an article over the weekend about the wealthiest Black man in the country who is the head of a private equity group that invested in minority businesses. And I read that, and right there, the light bulb went on to say that, you know, people who could now identify these entrepreneurs, these minority entrepreneurs, and invest in them. If one person can become a billionaire by investing in them, other people can become wealthy by investing in them. So again, access to capital is key. And one access to capital component that I know John has absolutely been banging the drum about since I've known him. One way to get capital is to have profit in a company. And the way you get profit in a company is to generate revenue for that company. And the revenue component means that companies in our state need to look at their suppliers and vendors and look at the minority suppliers and vendors and make sure that they have representation there and they're hiring from that group of companies. Because the more revenue those companies get, the more profit they have. It's a source of capital that is more readily available right now than private equity or venture capital, or in some cases, bank loans. So we have at the Chamber an initiative called Buy New Jersey, which is to have people focus on buying everything they can, whether it's a consumer or a business, from vendors and companies in New Jersey to promote revenue and enhance and grow our economy at a time of very significant need. So that fits perfectly with the concept of looking at minority vendors and trying to incorporate them into your buying cycle.
So, gentleman you referenced, Tom, was Robert Smith. Robert Smith was the same gentleman sometime last year, was the commencement speaker at Morehouse in Atlanta, and he paid I think it was $40 million he paid off student loans for the graduating class. So not only did they get their degree that day, they got their debt paid, and I think Derek Green, who works for the governor, his son was one of the recipients of that. So that's a pretty big deal. But we need more Robert Smiths to be engaged. But to your point, we need corporations around the state to embrace this supply diversity issue. We're working closely with PSE&G, who's really stepped up, Tom, and Ralph Izzo, based on conversations that he and I had during board meetings. We got things going. John Rogers, his aerial fund, PSE&G Park, a substantial amount of dollars in his fund. American Water here in New Jersey did the same thing. Those are the examples of how we could help Black businesses grow. But PSE&G also adopted what I'm hoping we can get done with the corporations around the board is getting second and tier strategies. So they're prime contractors. They've got many of them to join the chamber as well, but get them to commit to second and third tier spend. we're challenging black businesses, if they get a contract with corporations in New Jersey, to commit to second and third spin, work with the mayor of Newark around that strategy. And we're getting some very encouraging conversations and some impactful results. So we got to drive the value proposition of business to black firms, so that they not only at the goods and services, but the professional services as well. Managing state pension money, underwriting state bonds. We have black firms that have the capacity to do that. And we're pushing Governor Murphy and his administration to do that because it only makes sense.
Right. You mentioned just a minute ago the mayor of Newark, so that drives to a question we just got a couple of minutes ago. It's for both of you, actually. But how do you plan to enlist the support of community leaders around New Jersey for these initiatives?
So I've been having weekly meetings with the Black Caucus, led by Senator Rice and co-chaired by Assemblywoman Sumter. I'm also working with Mayor Matt, who's president of the Mayor's Alliance. Those are a couple of ways we're going at it. On the Republican side, Senator Kane and Panacio have been very helpful in connecting us to the Republican delegation. And as a result of meeting with Panacio several years back, the bonding bill was initiated through his caucus and co-sponsored by Rice, and then ultimately signed by Governor Christie. So we have another bill pending with Panacio, as well as several bills from the Black Caucus that I think will get at some of this transparency and public spend, which is non-existent. We don't even know where the state's spending this money, but I can tell you they're not spending much with black people, and that has to change. Black mayors have to step up and spend more money with black businesses. School board officials, similarly, county executives. So we're having a very comprehensive conversation with all sectors, corporate and public sectors, in order for us to get at that $5,900 net worth for blacks versus $275,000 for whites in New Jersey. We need a very targeted approach to get this done. And I think this conversation with Tom and you all is a way of going down that path.
And Ray, another aspect of that, our next door neighbor in Trenton is the League of Municipalities. And I said up front, we're going to be having discussions with many organizations about what we're trying to do. And that's a perfect organization to address what you just asked. Also, to get to local officials, the network of Chamber Alliance that we put together, that's a powerful way for businesses in a certain locality to talk to their local officials about what we're trying to do. So many different attack points, combining what John said and what I said and many others will get us to that conversation.
We had a question, kind of a specific tangent of that very same question. What can be done to ensure that black and minority-owned businesses can take advantage of the capital construction projects underway, such as the Turnpike, the AC Expressway, and the like?
I mean, Ray, you're asking all the right questions. The governor has commissioned a disparity study to set up goals, but even if things go as intended, all likelihood that will not be finalized until 2021, right? We need more real than policy. We need folks to get in the room, have some real conversations about how we can get more businesses, particularly black businesses, to the table to present and compete for opportunities. And that needs to happen across the board. And again, there's a lot of motion, but we need some deliberate action right now.
Okay. We had one more question come in from a questioner who acknowledges that a lot of these initiatives are new, but he's wondering if there's been any discussions yet in both the private or the public sector about things like procurement and contracts like we were just speaking about, but also board seats, senior management, recruitment, efforts to recruit for regular employment, and also how promotions are worked in various private sector organizations. And when and how do you see this coming?
Well, Ray, I can tell you that our board is going to be addressing that head on. And I'm not going to speak for John, but I know how John thinks. And nobody is looking to put people in positions where they can't succeed. But there are many, many qualified people of color, Black business people, who deserve an opportunity to be on boards, but they're not given that opportunity. So I think what I would say, and John can speak for himself, the idea here is to give them the opportunity to be considered and then let them earn their way. And if they earn their way, they're going to be tremendously additive to that company as a board member.
So absolutely. So let me add to this. To this little note here. So my commitment, as I said earlier, is that we're not going to put up anyone to vie for opportunities that's not going to meet the value proposition. We are committed to this. We want to be the clearinghouse, the vet firms, produce capability statements, and they represent experience. And those who may not be ready for prime time as an A-lister, we're looking to leverage resources to do mentor protege and teaming arrangements to help them be able to respond the next time or at a lower level. But there's opportunities for people to play, and we just have to get them at the level of experience, level of capacity, and level of abilities to execute. So, you know, we could, just like making the loan, you can either make the loan or find a way not to make the loan. I'm a former lender, I've seen it done. But so the commitment to excellence, the commitment to make this happen, that's where the will comes in. We can always fall back on policy to exclude people for participation, or we can stand up and acknowledge that we're underperforming in terms of our inclusion and our competitiveness in New Jersey, but we're committed to make that change today.
Okay. We're coming up on an hour, so we're just about done. I've got one more question I'd like to ask to have you fold it into your final comments. But John was talking before about the transformative moments. The fact we need to acknowledge, we need to have accountability, and then we need a plan where there is implementation and execution. So to each of you, what does success look like in the long run with this? John, want to go first?
So success looks like this conversation. One, we've acknowledged that there's work to be done here. Two, we've made ourselves accountable to a process that we're still putting together. Success will also start to take shape when we have men and women who are leaders in this state will respond to our call, respond to the challenge, respond to this opportunity, and say, hey, we're committed today to go from 1 Black or 0 Blacks on our board to 2 to 3. Committed similarly to go from 0 Black contractors to 2, to 3, to 5, to 10. We're committed to make investments in the communities that we've never done before to increase development skills, to increase capacity for businesses to participate, et cetera, to hire more people. These are the things that I believe we can accomplish. And so we're okay. I'm okay with minimal success and build upon it. And I think we can achieve that. And we got some good people in New Jersey who I believe understand that.
Ray, I think the answer I would give you is probably the biggest challenge we have right now is the challenge of communication and education to talk to people and make them aware of the significance and the magnitude of the opportunities or the inequality of opportunities that exist. So to me, a measure of success will be that when John and I come knocking at doors, people open those doors and listen to us and talk to us because I think once we have the opportunity to talk to the right people around the state, that they will embrace this like we've embraced it. And so welcoming arms and a welcome attitude to what we're trying to accomplish will be my measure of success. So I know we have to close out here, and John, if you want to say something just to close out, then I would like to end with a comment from, to quote Tom Donahue, who is the CEO of the U.S. Chamber. So John, any final comment you'd like to make?
Yeah, well, Tom, and to your team of professionals that stand beside you and provide you with the support you need, I thank you. To our board colleagues, I would strongly encourage you to not leave us at the altar. Tom and I have stepped out on faith, believing that our vision aligns with your vision. Tom and I believe that collectively we can make New Jersey more competitive. I want to be held accountable. I'm sure Tom is subscribing to the same. We have a huge opportunity here to really answer a lot of unanswered questions as to why there's such disparities in the state, and come forward with some real solutions to make New Jersey a better place for us all to live and work. So to Tom's point, I hope that you will respond to the call and allow us an opportunity to make a difference in our state. Again, thank you for the opportunity to participate today.
John, it's always a pleasure working with you. I'm very excited about this challenge we're going to face together, and we've had that conversation several times over many years, and I'm looking forward to the journey. But let me close with a couple of comments that were made by Tom Donahue, who is the CEO of the U.S. Chamber. And Tom didn't close the town hall meeting with these comments. He opened the town hall meeting with these comments, but I'd like to close with the comments. Tom said, "It is the right thing for a strong society that values the dignity and promise of every man, woman, and child to attack these opportunities." He went on to say that we need to drive meaningful, measurable impact through public policy and private sector solutions. And he finally said, to finish his comments, "We fundamentally believe that all Americans should have the opportunity to earn their success, rise on their own merit, and live the American dream. But we know today that isn't the case. Too many are held back because of the color of their skin." So I will close with that. John, thank you, my friend. I look forward to this. And to all of you on the call, please take our calls and let's have some very honest dialogue so we can come up with some very significant solutions.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Look forward to the next steps.